Hello and welcome
My
back.
phone is loading.
Okay. Welcome back. We are now live with Jenny from Green Legacy Hiroshima, a very innovative project to spread peace and hope around the world. Welcome, Jenny. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is Jenny. My name is Jenny Xinluan. I am currently based in Beijing, China, but I am part of the team of Green Legacy Hiroshima. I was living in Hiroshima for about 2 years until mid-April. I had to come back a little bit earlier than expected because of the pandemic. I was working with the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, Hiroshima office. And that's where I got to know about Green Legacy Hiroshima, and I became the communications lead of our teams. I manage the website, and we'll talk more about what the organization is. So I went to Japan from the US. I went to college in the US for 4 years. Now I'm back in Beijing, which is my home.
How's the weather there today?
It's very hot, but I have my fan running, and it's possibly the coolest day of this week, so I'm grateful.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Take care. It's
Yeah.
getting hotter. Is everybody wearing masks everywhere outside? Everybody being very careful about the coronavirus?
Yes. Actually, Beijing just got its emergency level down by one level yesterday. So the masks are still required, but people are gradually, our life are going back to normal. I can go out to eat and hang out with my friends. Yes.
Wow,
Which I'm really
good.
grateful for. And stay healthy, everybody.
Yeah, stay healthy and things are moving forward in a safe and positive way. That's great. So let's introduce Green Legacy a little bit. This is the website, and it's co-sponsored by UNITAR, as you mentioned, in Hiroshima. It's a United Nations office to oversee Asia negotiations, conflict negotiation, and ANT Hiroshima, which is a peace NPO organization in Hiroshima. So on the Green Legacy Hiroshima website, it's very easy to find glh.unitar.org, and you can immediately see the map of all the countries around the world where they have sent the seeds from the survivor trees. That's amazing. Do you want to introduce anything about this website or page?
Sure. So there's some proud features that we have on the website, but more importantly, that we now have over 100 partners in 36 countries. And you can see on the pins, these are our partners, which are mostly universities and botanic gardens. And if you scroll down, you can see our latest updates that we have from our partners. For example, we have an update from San Diego Botanic Garden saying that the ginkgo, they're growing healthily. So that this is how we keep in touch with our partners. You can also see this short introduction video here. And yes, this is just my brief introduction now. We'll go deeper later.
Yeah, great. I really like how this map is interactive so that you can click on any of the green dots and then it'll tell you exactly where the survivor tree is. So for example, I clicked in New Zealand and it said botanical gardens, or another one said university. So that's one of the things about sending the seeds is it has to be to institutions, right? Jenny?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now we only send seeds to larger institutions, especially universities, research institutes, and botanic gardens, because they have the ability to take care of these seeds and saplings for longer. As our co-founder Nesrin Azimi always says, this is a 1,000-year project. These trees will be here forever. Maybe not forever, but their offsprings will be here. They will be around for a very long time, much longer than ourselves. Yeah. So we want the people who have the ability to take care of them with the resources.
Yeah, well, the trees are important in Hiroshima, and there's special people in Hiroshima or Nagasaki who care for the trees, I've heard. And of course, when you send the seeds abroad, you want to make sure the legacy of peace and hope is also continued, right? One thing I love
Yes.
about seeing the hibakujumoku, as they're called, is the variety. There's actually so many different kinds of survivor trees, right?
Yes. So we have, maybe let's just go back to what hibakujumoku is, just in case if somebody who don't really know what it is. So these are the trees that survived the atomic bombing in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. And so how we define these trees are the trees within 2 kilometer radius from the hypocenter of the bombing. And now we have 161 of these trees still living in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And there are various species. They're grown in different conditions. They have different health conditions as well. Some of the trees are growing more healthily, but some of them are a little bit sick. And we do have a tree doctor, Mr. Horiguchi Chikara. He takes care of these trees. And also on our website, you can see the map under the tab Trees in Hiroshima. We also have this little map showing not all the trees, but some of the trees, and you can see where they're located, where what kind of species they are, and what type of trees they are. Are they still standing at the same spot as they were before the bombing? And all these information you can see on the website.
Yeah, that's great. So let's introduce the main players of the Green Legacy Hiroshima. So we have Chikara Horiguchi, like you mentioned. He's the arborist, so he's the main farmer, tree keeper. How would you say arborist in easy English? He's in charge of all the seeds and saplings, right?
Yeah, we call him the tree doctor sometimes.
Oh, tree doctor. I
He
like
takes care
that.
of them.
And Tomoko
Yes.
Watanabe in the lower picture in the middle of the group. She is the co-founder and coordinator of Green Legacy. And she runs the organization ANT. What does ANT stand for?
ANT is Asian Network of Trust.
Right. And then we
And
have...
I was also interning there when I was in Hiroshima.
Oh, you were? Wonderful. And then we have Nasreen Azimi, who used to be the director of UNITAR in Hiroshima. And she is the co-founder with Tomoko Watanabe of the Green Legacy Hiroshima.
Right, and she's the current coordinator of our team as well.
Wonderful. And when I was listening to interview with Nasreen, she was saying how when she first had the idea for Green Legacy, she was so blown away by the stories about the trees. And I remember feeling like that too. When I visited the trees in Hiroshima, for me, it had a really powerful connection to not only hope, but also rebuilding for our future, because climate change is such a major problem. So by taking the seeds from trees that they never thought would survive, they thought the trees would be gone forever after the blast, right? And taking the seeds because the trees survived and they regrew again. And so it's about resilience and rebirth. And then sending those seeds to war-torn countries or places that had horrible disasters in hopes that they can rebuild their lives and their communities. Such a beautiful message.
Right. Especially if you see the pictures of Hiroshima right after the bombing, you can see a lot of these basically just black sticks on the ground, but they're just those trees, who used to be very lush with beautiful leaves, but they just became charred and blackened. And plus, it was said at that time that no plant will grow in the same ground. for 70 years, but now we have all these trees still flourishing on the same place at the same spot. And especially for me as like a quite young person and growing up in a city that I was never really aware of the environments around me, especially, and even when I first went to Hiroshima, I didn't really feel much, even in a way that I became a little bit unaware of the trees around me until I got to know more about hibakujumoku and get interacting with people from other countries, especially war-torn countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, and seeing their reactions when they see these trees, how much they resonate with the story, how much the rebuilt city of Hiroshima inspires them. I gradually became just more conscious of my surroundings, seeing, oh, this tree is here, somebody planted here, or it was growing here for a long time, or the weeping willow, the closest tree standing to the hypocenter, still standing at the same spot. And just seeing the tree, making me realize, oh, this tree was here for over 70 years. It's witnessed so much. And it reminds me of my responsibilities to preserve and to think about the past, the present, and the future.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, living in Hiroshima for so long, you just have a very strong feeling. It's really important just to remember and to pay tribute to what happened, and be mindful of what happened in Hiroshima. Hiroshima is a beautiful modern city now, and we have big department stores and we have shopping centers just like anywhere else. But it's really important to have these plaques around that show where the survivor tree is, or that show the before photo or after photo after the bombing, like this one, to realize where you are and to understand the heritage. And that's so important for living in Hiroshima. How long were you in Hiroshima? How long did you live here? Jenny, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear Jenny? Oh. Can you hear Jenny? No? Okay. Let's go to... Can you hear? Are you okay?
So I went to Hiroshima in September 2018, right after I graduated from college.
Yeah. So...
Okay, I think I'm back.
Are you back? Okay.
Okay. I'm not sure if my last sentence was heard, but I'll just repeat. I went to Hiroshima in September 2018, right after I graduated from college, and I spent about a year and 7 months in the city. So I came back home in April 2020, and it was quite a journey for me to get to know about the city because I never visited the city before, and especially the history and the culture, the environment, the nature, and everything. Many of these aspects just inspired me so much. For me, just from a nature's perspective, how much I've become, like you said, mindful of the surroundings around me. Even when I'm home now, I just become more, I see these plants and just the sustainable, how important it is to live sustainable life, to think about what's going to happen in the future for these trees and for ourselves.
Yeah. And I think with everything that's happening in America now and all the protests about Black Lives Matter and the protests against police violence, and then seeing the trees, maybe we should be sending the hibakujumoku to America, to these places where there have been these horrible stories, and help them rebuild. And I think one of them in recent news I saw in Oregon. Do you want to talk about the Oregon case? Do you know about that story?
Actually, I'm not exactly familiar with that specific story.
Okay. So in the Oregon Cable newspaper, they're talking about seedlings from trees that survived the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, Japan August 6, 1945, are available to plant in towns and campuses in Oregon, the Oregon Department of Forestry said Tuesday. The seedlings should be planted next spring to mark the 75th anniversary of the bombing and the end of World War II. So this is from last year. So they'll be planting the seedlings this spring. And then Hiroshima residents have been sharing seeds from the survivor trees around the world in hopes for peace and hope of rebuilding. So that's wonderful to know that there are some of these seeds of hope in American cities, because America right now is in a lot of turmoil. It's a great symbol of recovery and peace.
Right.
Yeah. There was another article. This is from the website. So Green Legacy Hiroshima Initiative is a global volunteer campaign aiming to disseminate the universal message of trees that survived the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. And it was created in 2011 by two friends, Nasreen Azimi and Tomoko Watanabe. So I think it's wonderful how two friends, both of them working on different social equity building organizations, joined into one union for this project. It's such a wonderful story. Japan Times also did a story about the seeds being sent to Oslo. Have you heard about seeds going to Oslo, Norway?
Yes, that was before my time, but I am familiar with our seeds in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, Oslo, that's where they have the Nobel Peace Prize, right? So it seems like a very suitable place to have the seeds. So that's on the Japan Times from a few years ago. BBC talking about, this is also from a few years ago, talking about the survivor ginkgo biloba trees seeds being sent to Manchester. Manchester in England had terrorist bombing in the city center, and so it's a wonderful legacy to send the survivor trees seeds to Manchester. And this was 6 years ago, so maybe we can see the trees now if you visit Manchester. It's such a nice, like the name, right? Green Legacy. What a nice legacy. Let's go through some of the photos that you sent. So we looked at the castle, and we looked at Hiroshima before and after. Can you tell us a little bit about the definition of an A-bomb survivor tree?
Yes, sure. So like I mentioned before, so these trees, A-bomb survivor trees, are the trees who survived the atomic bombing. And how we define them now is how within 2 kilometer radius from the hypocenter, so in Hiroshima at least, so we have 161 of these trees still standing now.
And then there's different kind of definition. Let's see, identifying. So how can you tell if it's an A-bomb tree in Hiroshima? Do you want to explain the plaque system?
Sure. So we have these plaques made. So if you see the plaque, you can see the logo on the left side, and we had our wonderful graphic designer Sera-san who made this, and then you can see the note in Japanese saying hibakujumoku, and with the species name, and you can also know the direction of the hypocenter from the tree. You can see there's a little code on the second line under the big name.
Mm-hmm.
There will be little code saying A, B, or C. These are different types of the trees that we can explain later.
Okay.
And if it's E, then it will be east side. So you can know where the hypocenter is from the trees.
Okay.
And there's a little barcode over there you can scan and know more about the trees as well.
Right. The QR code in the bottom right corner So if you have a QR code reader, you can be taken to more information. And the plaque is in 2 languages, yeah? Japanese and English.
Yes.
And I always like looking at the plaques because I'm never sure what kind of tree is. So it always says weeping willow, but I didn't know that, or what kind of tree. So I'm happy to know the kind of tree, but I didn't know about the code. So you said E. Can you tell us again? What does E mean?
So E is for east.
East. Okay, so the direction from
It's
the
a
blast.
direction. Right.
Okay.
And then you can see there's another letter in the code, which is B.
Uh-huh.
And I guess we'll talk about the A, B, C types, the categorizations of these trees later.
Okay.
But we have 3 types of trees categorized by the tree researcher, Professor Suzuki from the Chiba Daigaku, Chiba University. He studied these trees very carefully and categorized them into 3 types. And so that letter stands for that.
Okay.
And below in the paragraph, you can see more how far it is from the hypocenter and have a better idea of an introduction of hibakujumoku.
Mm-hmm.
Even if people don't know about these trees, and it will be a very surprising and nice discovery.
I think so, yeah. The next slide, it says A-bomb survivor trees of Hiroshima, hope for living and rebuilding, standing memories of the war and bombing, a future reminder of peace. I think, like you said before, in the Hiroshima Museum, that's one of the new parts where they have a big picture of one of the survivor trees. And they have that story that nobody thought anything would grow again. And once they saw the trees regrowing, the local people had a feeling of hope. And that's such a beautiful part of the museum. So it's so nice to have a whole organization dedicated to the legacy of the trees. I love that. Can you explain the A type? Jenny, can you hear? The A type? Okay, maybe Jenny can't hear us, but A type is a single original trunk tree which hasn't been moved. So it often has scars, it's often tilting, and it is tilting to the hypocenter side or away from the hypocenter side. So it depends on where it is around the hypocenter, whether it's tilting or not. So this is an example of one of the A type of trees. Jenny, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we're okay.
Okay, I can hear you now. Do you want to explain about the A type?
Yes, sure. So the A type are the trees that were not moved. So they stand at the exact same spot before and after the bombing. So it's the original trunk, and it was not split into halves or anything like that. So when they're not moved, you can see very clearly there are scars on the side facing the hypocenter. And from the research done by Professor Suzuki, we got to know that they're tilting slightly towards the hypocenter side, because the side facing the hypocenter, where they got burned and with the radiation, they have some irregular growth activities going on that side. So the other side, not facing the hypocenter, are actually going a little bit faster, which caused the tilting. It'll be very interesting when you actually get to see these trees in person, and you can see the very clear contrast between those 2 sides.
Wonderful. And the next one, let's see. A type, we saw A type distribution. So this is the graph showing pointing toward the hypocenter. This picture that you sent me. Do you want to describe it? Jenny, can you hear?
Right. Yes.
So the
Sure.
picture.
So
Yeah.
this picture. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So the picture has all of the little dots are the trees, and you can see that the arrows are which way these trees are tilting towards. And in the very center, the red dot is the hypocenter. And if you see closely, it's a map of Hiroshima. You can see all the rivers and the bridges and everything.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's interesting. So this is where is this studied? Is Hiroshima University teachers and students?
It's Kitsuba University.
Mm.
Professor Suzuki studied all of these trees.
Okay. All right. Let's look at the B type. Do you want to introduce the B type? Jenny?
So B type,
Uh-huh.
in contrast to A type, are the trees with the original trunk, but were moved because, in order to preserve, because maybe the road construction, they were building something, a bridge. So these trees, they don't necessarily have the tilting, not exactly in the way, they might have the tilting, but not in the direction of the hypocenter. You cannot tell which way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And data shows they're slightly straighter and
less tilting. So they were moved in order to preserve, like to put in an area where they wanted to keep them and let them grow for a long time. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Let's go to C type. Do you want to introduce C type?
Okay, so sure. So the C types are the types. We will know that the A types and B types, they have the original trunks, but C types don't. They regrew from their roots. Maybe their trunks were burned, or they were just gone because of the blast, and they have little to no visible scars because they just regrew from the roots. And on the slide, you can see it also says a simple of recovery and resilience. It's always a really beautiful story when you learn about that. Oh, they just regrew from the roots because their whole body were gone, but they were resilient enough to start a new life in a sense.
Yeah, wonderful. That's amazing. So the whole tree was destroyed, but the roots were still viable, and the roots brought a new tree back. That is amazing. Let's look again at the partners countries. So there's 94 partners in 37 countries, just to remind everyone. And then the seeds from survivor trees are harvested in Hiroshima. One of the most famous spots shown here is in Chican Garden, which is not so far from Hiroshima Station. It's an easy walk from Hiroshima Station to go here. It's a beautiful garden any time of year. You can see the different seasons. Have you been to Chican when you were in Hiroshima, Jenny?
Yes, I was there many times, also for the seed picking events, but also just for a walk. It's always very nice.
Yeah. In fact, they have rice plantings festival. They have cherry blossoms, beautiful cherry blossoms in spring. They have ume blossoms. You can try on kimono and have tea ceremony. So it's actually a very active garden, and it's beautiful whenever you visit. And this is where the seeds are harvested for Green Legacy and sent around the world, or one of the places. Are there many places where the seeds are harvested?
It depends on the species of the trees, and we usually get the ginkgo seeds from Shuken because there's this very big and beautiful ginkgo survivor ginkgo there. We also go to Hiroshima Castle. There are this hackberry tree, and for what is it called again? Kaki, kaki,
Kaki persimmon.
persimmons. The persimmon trees, right? Persimmon, which are located not really in Hiroshima Castle or Chican Garden. They might just be on one of the streets. Yes, so we harvest the trees just depending. Their location can be everywhere in the city.
Wow. And so, of course, it depends on the season and the type of tree, and then the harvesting schedule is different, right? I asked Nasreen if I could join one of the seed harvesting sessions, and she said, you have to ask the tree doctor. The tree doctor knows the schedule. So I'll check. I'll check if I can be invited to a seed harvesting. It's kind of a special event, right? All right.
Yeah, so it's always nice, like a community event, to get people together, just enjoy some time together and appreciate the nature.
Yeah, to appreciate the beautiful outdoors and collecting the seeds at the same time. There's some nice videos on YouTube of the tree doctor taking the seeds to the next level, right?
By picking the seeds ourselves is just from my perspective, is a way to know.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Even the cycle of life sometimes. Thinking about these seeds I picked are going everywhere in the world, and the second generation trees are blossoming somewhere else.
Yeah, that gives you hope, doesn't it? Here's the list of countries, the worldwide partners. So we have Afghanistan, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bosnia, so many different countries in so many different locations. Of course, around Japan as well, there are some survivor tree locations. Let's look at some of the partners' stories in detail. David Krieger, he's the president of Nuclear Age Peace Foundation in America. And Nasreen, I think, has a personal connection with him. Do you know about his story at all, Jenny?
Yes. Okay. Are we talking about David Krieger?
Yes.
The Nuclear Age Foundation.
Yes.
Yes. So we did this profile on him because he was retiring from Nuclear Age Foundation, and we talked a lot. Our questions basically asked him about his own experience visiting Hiroshima, and what does these trees mean for him, or like in his vision, what can these trees do for our next generations? And yeah, he shared his experience in our profile. And maybe should we read part of the profile, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Do you want me to read it?
Sure. I think my connection can be a bit sometimes.
I only have part of the profile here. He's co-founded the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation, NAPF, in 1982, and has since been serving as the president. He'll step down in 2019. Under his leadership, the foundation has initiated many innovative and important projects for building peace, strengthening international law, abolishing nuclear weapons, and empowering peace leaders. He's the author or edited many studies of peace in the nuclear age. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize on several occasions and recipient of many awards for accomplishments in peace. Father of three, and enjoys tennis, hiking, and poetry. I like that you add that personal side. He's a person as well. He's done amazing things, and he has a family. That's important to remember. Also, seeds have been sent to Moscow University Do you want to introduce that story?
Sure. We have our very first partners in profile done on Dr. Sergei Shaposhnikov, and who actually was a former employee at the UNITAR Hiroshima office, and that's how the partnership was created. And he actually currently teaches at the business school of Moscow State University. And we actually had the planting. Our tree doctor, Horiguchi-san, actually visited the planting ceremony last year. And the message is just, no matter whether you're a business school or medical school, this story, the trees are relevant to everybody. And we have to be responsible for our environment, whether you're a businessman, you're a doctor, or just as a person.
Yeah, wonderful. Infinite possibilities. Even a small idea can have tremendous universal resonance. International partner, Moscow University. Very nice. There was another one, Fukutomi Planting. Do you know that story?
Yes. So this are the things that we do domestically. We have a lot of partners, domestic partners in Japan as well. And the planting ceremony was in Fukutomi-cho. It's like a countryside, a little bit outside of Hiroshima city. So we just planted a ginkgo tree there. A lot of people came, and usually it's a very interesting idea for some people to know about hibakujumoku, and we're lucky to get some American students and Japanese, and we got some kind of teaching, and we have these beautiful saplings planted there.
Mm-hmm. So are these international students at Hiroshima University, maybe?
No, they were actually from, I think they were from an American university. They were on
I see it here.
Trip.
Yeah, Illinois University, it looks like.
Right, yeah. Southern Illinois University.
Mm-hmm. So they were studying in Japan or in Hiroshima, and then had a chance to be part of the ceremony?
They were on a trip. They were on a short trip. And actually, the Japanese students were gathered from 5 universities, not just in Hiroshima prefecture. So everybody got together to greet American students. And I participated as well. We had those group discussions on cultural mutual understanding of how to understand other people from different cultures, and talked about nature, and everybody got to know about hibakujumoku.
That's nice. What did you learn about how to get along with people in different cultures? Any advice?
From me, I personally lived in different countries, but it's never enough to. There's always more that for you to learn. So I'll always be humble and to just embrace the differences. There will be differences.
Yeah, that's so important. Have an open mind, right? Don't judge a book by its cover. All these old cliches, they're true. You know, give people a chance, no matter what they look like.
Yes.
Then the next slide, environmentalism and hibakujumoku. Do you want to introduce that?
Yes. Just to not prioritizing our own convenience over nature. Some of the good examples you can probably see from the pictures. These are the hibakujumoku that the buildings actually were built around them. Instead of moving these trees, people decided to build our constructions around them to let them be part of our own surroundings. And this is something very important, because a lot of times that we just conveniently forget that we coexist with these plants, and they're just not any disposable trees or greens that we can put them anywhere.
Yeah, I love that.
And plus, the nuclear weapons and nuclear energy affect not just us, but also trees, plants, animals, our air, and everything.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I didn't realize that some buildings were built around the trees so as not to disturb the trees. I would love to live in a house that has a tree right in the middle. Like I would just love to find a beautiful tree and instead of knocking it down to make a house, just incorporate it inside my house design, right? It's such a beautiful idea. So I think
Yes.
these two places, are they shrines that were built around the trees?
I see on the left one is a temple in Teramachi, and on the right side, I think it's a temple a little bit down south in the city.
So for people who don't know, Teramachi is an area of Hiroshima that has lots of teras, so lots of temples. It's like Temple Street in Hiroshima, it's called, right? Teramachi. And I've been there. I didn't notice that that was a survivor tree. I'm going to have to go back and have a look sometime. Yeah. So not prioritizing people's convenience over nature. So I didn't really understand when I read that, but now that you explained, you don't knock it down and build a building. You think of how can I live in balance with nature and build my building in kind of collaboration with the tree. I love that. That's wonderful. Oh, we lost Jenny. Okay, let's see if we can get Jenny back for the last 15 minutes. Okay, so I'll continue until she can connect again. Sometimes this international connection is really tricky for live streaming. I apologize, everybody who's watching. So Jenny was explaining how some of the survivor trees in Hiroshima had the buildings, the planners built the building around the tree instead of cutting down the tree and making a building and then planting your trees. And I thought that was such a wonderful idea I had never heard of before. In Nagasaki, there's a really beautiful shrine, and half of the Tori gate, the shrine's gate, stone gate in front of the shrine, was knocked down. Half of it was still standing. Oh, there she is. There she is. Hello. Can you hear us?
Oh,
Are you
hello,
back?
I'm back.
Okay,
Yes.
good,
Can you hear
good.
me?
Yes. Thank you for joining us again. I was just talking about a shrine that I visited in Nagasaki. And I can't remember the name of the shrine, but the front of the shrine had a stone gate, Tori gate, and half of it was destroyed in the blast, but half was still standing. And that was impressive. But then behind it were, I think, not ginkgo trees, maybe what kind of tree was it? But they were survivor trees, and there were two of them. Camphor. I think they're camphor trees. And they had a plaque saying they thought these trees had died in the blast. And when the trees came back to life, and both of them came back to life, the two trees side by side, they thought that is a really wonderful sign of hope and resilience. And I really like how they didn't knock down those trees, of course, and they built the shrine again around these trees that were regenerating and coming back to life. And so it's the same idea. It's just a beautiful concept. I can't think of many buildings around the world where they incorporate trees inside the design. I think we should do that more. What do you think?
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of bamboo. Do you like bamboo? And
Yes.
I would love to have bamboo
It grows so
inside.
fast.
Yeah, but yeah, there's problems with the foundation, right? Let's look at the next example. Colombia. There was a partner in Colombia. Do you want to introduce this story if you know it?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sure. So our partner in Colombia, actually, Dr. Vladimir Ravinsky was also a former employee of UNITAR Hiroshima office,
Uh-huh.
and he is an international relations professor.
Are you back? Okay, go ahead. Continue.
At IC University in Colombia. Again, the idea of universal to all the disciplines, we should incorporate sustainability in our own thinking, in our lifestyles, and just for everybody to think about the nature and how we should treat our environment in general.
Right. Yeah. I love this part. He says, you ask, what attracted you to Hiroshima in the first place? And he said, I had a chance to visit Hiroshima for the first time back in 1994 by the invitation of Japan-Russia Friendship Society. I fell in love with the city at first sight. I particularly enjoyed the feeling of openness and freshness because of the wide streets and many trees. Several years later, when I had to choose a place for postgraduate study, Hiroshima University turned out to be one of my options. My lasting memories of my first visit to Hiroshima contributed to the decision to study in Japan. That's beautiful. So the experience in Hiroshima brought him back to Japan and brought him back to Hiroshima, where he'd like to study. And then he was working for UNITAR, you said?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, wonderful. And he says, as an international relations scholar, my links to GLH, so Green Legacy Hiroshima, and Hiroshima have been helping me in defense of the view that international relations as a discipline is responsible for contributing scientific knowledge to the decision makers so that we can avoid repeating a tragedy as the one that struck Hiroshima. It's powerful, and I remember Nasreen telling me when she was director of UNITAR that the location of the UNITAR office opposite the Peace Park does a lot of good work for conflict negotiation. Yeah? Do you know what she's trying to say? Do you feel that?
Yes. Um, so our office is in front of the atomic bomb dome. So you can see the dome and you can see the Peace Park. So it's a full view of the Hiroshima. A lot of people know about the atomic bombed Hiroshima. We have all the memories just in front of our window, especially the window is a very long, kind of short, but very long, very wide. So it's like a painting in some way, especially in spring, you can see all the green. And we have all of these training programs especially for Afghanistan, Iraq, those post-conflict countries. We bring people, leaders in different sectors, especially younger leaders, to Hiroshima for them to learn, to get trained in leadership and management skills. And when they sit in that room and trying to learn the skills to make their country a better place, they can also see in the background is Peace Park, is the atomic bomb dome, and how much Hiroshima has come back after the bombing. And I was working with the program called Women Leadership Program for Afghanistan. So I got to meet these 20 really wonderful Afghan women. They're all very capable people in different sectors. I remember so clearly we went to the Hiroshima Women's Center in the Orizuru Tower, which is also another building right next to the atomic bomb dome. It's much higher building, and we went to the almost the top floor, and oversee Peace
You can look into the
Park.
A-bomb dome ruins,
I
right?
wish my country one day.
Yeah, it's a powerful place, and if you have people from warring nations who have conflict and they can see and be next to the Peace Park and the A-bomb dome, I think they get it, right? That it's important to work out our differences, to try to find collaborative way forward because of seeing the Peace Park and the A-bomb dome and being in Hiroshima. So it's not just about forgetting what happened and moving forward. It's about remembering, being aware what can happen if you don't work out your problems, right? Yeah, beautiful. Nice story. There was a nice story from Poland with the roses. Do you want to introduce that story?
Yes, sure. So it's whatever profile that we did with our partner in Poland. We had Dr. Marta Munder and Dr. Thomas Tawistowski, who are both scientists, and especially Dr. Munder is the head of the Department of the Dendrological Collections at the Polish Academy of Sciences, the Chican Garden. So she is this rose specialist, and she told this very beautiful story on this species of rose named Rosa Peace after the World War II, just to memorialize the war and how much we should treasure the peace we have now. And that really touched into the message of hibakujumoku as well, that we should remember the history, no matter it is the bombing of Hiroshima or the Nanjing massacre or the tragedy with Jewish people. And all of these memories should not be forgotten. And all of these plants are helping us to be aware of our own past and to hope for a better future.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So this type of rose, like the Hiroshima hibakujumoku, can now be seen in other places, and it's also a symbol of rebirth and recovery after the war. So this beautiful story and many stories from other partners around the world can be seen on the Green Legacy Hiroshima website. There was also a story about the Singapore ambassador at large. Do you want to introduce that? Jenny, do you want to talk about the Singapore?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to
Okay,
introduce?
great. So,
yeah.
Sure. So our Singapore entry was with Ambassador Tommy Cole, Ambassador at Large of Singapore, who's this very renowned Singaporean international lawyer, professor, and diplomat. He's such a great person, also a friend of our coordinator, Dr. Nesrin Azimi. And I especially like one point he talked about why he championed, why he made it happen with this partnership, especially for Singapore, a country that was a victim in World War II with the Japanese invasion. And one thing he said, I'm just going to read from the profile, and I hope the internet connection is good.
Go ahead.
I championed the partnership between Green Legacy Hiroshima and the Tembusu College and the Singapore Botanical Gardens because of my strong belief in world peace. The other message from Hiroshima is the opposition to nuclear weapons, and I hope we can also disseminate the message of peace with nature. And also from the first part is trying to find the part where he talked about, okay, here we go. The very last part says, I am not optimistic about the elimination of nuclear weapons, and those who possess them will never give them up. There are some countries which aspire to possess such weapons, and in truth, the greatest threat to world peace is not by nuclear weapons. The greatest threat comes from us, human beings. We're our own worst enemies. We kill each other for tribal, racial, religious, ideological, and other reasons. The killing will go on till the end of time. In the meantime, we're also making war against nature and against the ecosystems which sustain life on Earth. We must, however, not despair. We must fight for peace between human beings and between human beings and nature.
Yeah, that is so
Yes.
powerful and
And
so important.
yes.
We've
Right.
only got 5 more minutes. So let's go to the next example from Rwanda. I love this story. Do you want to introduce the Rwanda story?
Sure. This is more like a narrative by Marie-Louise Toari, who was a Rwandan refugee, and she built this wonderful elementary school in Rwanda, and she just told the story of how difficult it was to bring the seeds, there it was to weed seeds out. Yes. So I was very inspired by her own story, how she studied in Japan and went back, and that was when the horrible incident happened in Rwanda, the Rwanda genocide, and when she had to run, and that's when she came to Japan again.
Yeah, we had a talk the other day with Refugee International Japan, and realizing that the story of refugees could be all of our stories. That it's so powerful and important to support refugees because we have more and more wars, we have more and more climate change refugees. So I'm so glad that when she had her experience in Japan and then she went back to Rwanda and now taking the seeds of the survivor trees. What a lovely story. And she started planting them with her students in the school. Let's look at Amanda Chambers, the artist from the UK. Do you want to talk about
Sure.
Amanda? Yeah?
Yes. So Amanda Chambers, she's this artist. She does a lot of pottery. She does many things. And pottery was one of the things when she came to Japan to make. And she got to know about hibakujumoku, and she was very interested in making art with hibakujumoku. And I want to talk about one of the pictures on this profile that I remember very clearly. She said why she brought some of the seeds, and I'm not really sure the name of the exact technique, but I think it was kind of burned into the plaque. And I remember she said she was surprised to see the pattern very similar to the nuclear pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways very special because it's made with hibakujumoku, the plants that experienced atomic bombing. And now we have one of these signs. And I think that's part of the power of art and help us to memorialize the memories that we had, or history in some ways, in an artistic way.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes an artist can communicate the idea in a better way than someone just telling you information, right? Like we know that everybody learns in different ways. Everybody has different ways of learning. Some people are visual, some people are more creative, some people like data, right? So what she did with her art was communicating the message in a new way. And I found it really powerful as well. I love her quote here. Dealing with such a well-known event can be daunting for an artist. How can one begin to say something new? But I think we return to these momentous events because they still have traction. And as our world appears still very unstable in both political and environmental terms, the story of the hibakujumoku is particularly relevant. So I think that's a beautiful sentiment. And she did such a great job with her exhibition on ceramics, but using the surviving trees as her teacher, right? Wonderful. So I think that is about our time up. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us. I'm so sorry we had some technical difficulties, but I really appreciate your insights from when you were in Hiroshima and from being part of this project and Thank you for all the good work that you continue to do with Green Legacy around the world. And we hope to see more of your wonderful articles sometime soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for your comments. And join us again tomorrow. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., we are talking to the samurai sword specialist, Paul Martin. So please join us. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye. Take care.